But I want to start with a notably good performance from last week, and that's the way that Trevor Lawrence played against the Bills in a huge win for Jacksonville. And I wanted to talk about Trevor with you because we haven't discussed him at all on this show. And Nate and I talk about Trevor and the Jags a lot, probably an unnecessary amount. There's no reason why. I just happen to have watched all of their games for one reason or another this year, based on circumstance. They played a couple London games, and we're big fans of his game. And I think that we see a special player and a top tier quarterback when we watch him play. But I always like kind of getting outside of my little bubble and the stuff that we talk about and get some perspective from someone who knows what he's looking at. Yeah. So when you went back and really studied him in that game against Buffalo, what were kind of your first impressions of him when you dug like one layer deeper than you probably had before?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I had a front row view sort of for his coming out party last year.
That's right.
In the wild card game. So when you decided that we were going to do this, or we decided we were going to do this, I was like, oh man, I really don't want to watch him because I still got that bitter taste in my mouth.
I didn't even think about that. I'm so sorry for making you relive that. That's on me.
I know. And but honestly, like digging into it, I was super impressed. He's playing fast, and honestly, I don't know if it was that Jaguars offensive line or like Ed Oliver looking like an all-pro on every single snap, but like the dude was under pressure all day long. And it wasn't even like he had a chance to even hitch on some of these like dropbacks and 3 steps out of gun. So they had their hands full up front, but the way he played, I mean, the opening drive was awesome. And then even the 2-minute drill was awesome. Some fumbles in the high red zone, which would have led to points, which would have been an even bigger margin of victory. Obviously, you got to clean up, but I was impressed. I mean, they ran 91 plays.
Yeah.
I was like, 91 plays with 3 turnovers. Like that's an astronomical number. So I'm not quite sure how they ran that much because 91 plays is insane. So
they were crazy on third down. I think they were 7 of 10 on third down in the second half. He made a couple hero throws on third down. I want to say they had 29 first downs over the course of the game. They really controlled the ball in that game, which I think is important because even if their defense had some nice moments in the first half, you don't want to give that guy that wears number 17 for the Bills any more chances than you have to. So I think their ability to kind of control time of possession and just control the pace of that game was really important. And when I wanted to do this is such a stupid question. But I like asking these sorts of questions because I think too often in NFL media and just this world in general, football is so complicated and so complex that general fans and even people who do this for a living are not always good at articulating why is X player good? What is really special about this guy? When you watch him play and you look at his traits, why is he good? And I think people's understanding of Trevor Lawrence is that he was the number 1 pick in the draft. He has a physical skill set that I think is enviable for anyone who doesn't have that skill set at quarterback. But the performance so far has been turnover heavy. It's been a little bit inconsistent at times. So I feel like people look at him as maybe somebody that's gifted, but still is pretty far down and pretty far away from the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. But when you watch him, what specifically about the way he plays the game stands out to you?
Well, the first thing I always look at for a quarterback in any offense is just how fast he plays. Is he trying to process information as he goes? And you can tell there's some quarterbacks out there, won't name names, we'll get into it different shows, but their process is just a lot slower than others. They hit their back foot and they're still stuck on number 1, even if the coverage dictates to go somewhere else, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And it's hard to watch. What I saw, and I played in this offense, this Doug Peterson offense, it's a little bit different, but I was with Press Taylor and Doug Peterson. Press Taylor was my quarterback assistant coach in 2016 in Philly. And then I was with Doug for 3 years in KC as an OC and then a year in 2016 as a head coach. So I know this offense, and this offense, I was just impressed with how well he got through reads, how fast he got through reads. I mean, a lot of this stuff in Doug Peterson's offense and this offense with Press Taylor is you're just sweeping the board reads, right? It's not like, hey, pre-snap, if they do this, we're going to do this. Or post-snap, if they do this. There's some plays like that, but a lot of it is sweep the board, pure progressions, and honestly, it allows quarterbacks to play a lot faster. So you might be looking at 1, not open, 2, not open, 3, not open, not really caring about the coverage as much, more so just getting into a rhythm with the offense. And that's exactly what I saw. I mean, I wrote this down on my notes. I was like, there's so many different play concepts as an offense that they gave the Buffalo Bills: a bootleg, a misdirection, a sprint out, a quarterback run. I mean, I was impressed with his legs the few times he took off in that game and got down. Deep play action shots, quick game, different formations. It's a very intricate offense. So you can tell he's really bright and really smart. So I think that to me is like the number one thing when I'm looking at a quarterback trying to take the next step is, first of all, does he play fast? Second of all, they have the skill players, man. Travis Etienne, like the best game of his pro career that game. And it wasn't even like they could run the ball. I think it was like the middle part of the game, other than like 2 or 3 drives, they had a ton, which I'm forgetting some because they had 91 plays. But there were some times where it was just like, hey, just 3 yards, and then he'd bust one. Or like, he was getting pressured in the pocket, in route concepts to the normal fan might be coming open down the field, but he's getting such a rush where he just has to find, Travis in the flat just right away. Just check it down. Like, just don't even take a sack. Don't take a negative play. And obviously the turnovers are the negative plays, but on the actual dropbacks where he is getting pressured, he understands the clock in his head is going off. He's able to get through progressions and down to his checkdowns.
Yeah, the speed with which he plays, even when their offense was awful in 2021, you saw some of that. You saw his command in the pocket, his understanding of that space. I think he has the 6th fastest time to throw in the NFL this year, and that's even down from what it was last year. He just plays so quickly. And you talk about that formula of they break a run every once in a while, but it's not always consistent and efficient. That's what it felt like last year. And that's kind of what was encouraging about watching their offense this against Buffalo, is that you saw some of those elements of what they were in 2022 when they really were rolling in the second half of the season. They had an explosive run game, even if the run game wasn't efficient. And that's what you saw on Sunday. The misdirection and all of the different ways they get him on the move, that is an element of this offense that really wasn't present. All the keepers and the boots under the old kind of version of what Doug Peterson did in Philadelphia, it wasn't a huge part of who they were. And I think Doug and Press, in their time away from the Eagles, looked at some of the stuff that was happening around the league and thought, this works for us. Our quarterback moves really well. We can incorporate more of this, and they have. And then that's the stuff that is familiar. That's the stuff we saw last year, and it's nice to see that back. Yeah. The difference that we didn't have last year when watching the Jags is having that dude on the outside who can just consistently win those one-on-one matchups, and not even just consistently win them, but consistently give your quarterback an outlet in those moments. Have a guy that your quarterback believes is going to win in those moments. And when I watched the connection that him and Calvin Ridley had during that game, that to me is what felt fresh and new about this offense, and what I think gives them potentially even another layer this year that they didn't have last year.
Yeah, I mean, I love all the skill players that the Jacksonville Jaguars have. I mean, they are stacked at receiver. They got a lot of crap a couple years ago for spending so much on free agency and receiver. Christian Kirk, all those guys, like they're legit. I mean, they have 3 legit options at receiver. Zay Jones, even on the back in line, that catch that he threw high. I mean, he got through his 4th read in about 2 seconds and was able to, like, that catch was amazing. But you go back
and you throw too, even getting that ball off from that angle was ridiculous.
Like, it was insane. It was one of the coolest touchdowns I've seen this year. And it didn't look like pretty getting, but if you just look like it got through, and then he's getting smoked in the head while he's hitting and just a high ball. But you go to Calvin Ridley, and I wrote this down. It's like so many deep comebacks.
Yeah.
Like the dude, because they can trust him to throw it, and they have to trust his speed. And they took a couple shots downfield, didn't hit it. All that does is it moves defenses back, it backs defenses off, and he was throwing these deep comebacks. I mean, rarely do you see anymore like that. I wouldn't say the comeback is dead, but there's not these like Dan Marino, John Elway just dropping back, throwing 20-yard comebacks to the field. I saw like 4 or 5 in this game, and I was like, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know the last time I saw that in a game so many times. And this is off just straight drop back. It's not like you're under center, play action, block it up. He's dropping 5, hitching a ball, letting it go early, and Ridley's just come back. And I'm like, dude, that's sweet, because that's like old school football, but it also shows his arm strength, and it also shows the speed that Calvin Ridley has. And they were being really creative with how they got the ball to him. They were doing jet sweeps, they were doing screens, they were doing quick game, deeper routes. So you can tell, I mean, this is a really big signing last year for them that, obviously everyone knows what happened with the suspension and gambling, but this was really cool to see for them.
What it reminds me of is the connection that Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen have, where you see so often where there's running those hitches and comebacks on the outside. And anytime he thinks he even has a slight matchup advantage, it's just an easy button to press over and over again. So if I can just ensure that I'm able to kind of pitch it to him outside the numbers because I know he's going to win that, it's such a reliable thing within the offense that I think can really calm down a quarterback and let him know that he always has a consistent outlet. And that's not what they had last year. If you look at what they had last year, the number that we threw out when we were doing the preview for the Jags, I believe they had the fewest percentage of their throws to the single receiver side in the NFL last year.
Wow.
All of their throws were schemed. If you looked at it, it was a 3-by-1, everything was rubs and picks and just making sure that they were creating separation for a lot of those guys, in part because they saw a lot of man coverage. Well, now, if they're going to see man coverage, they've got a much easier answer that is a much simpler decision for the quarterback to make to go along with all of those schemed touches that they can create for everyone else. And that mix, when it's really rolling, is very cool to watch.
Well, and then you I just want to hit back on, you were like, hey, it's easy pitch and catch. But it's really not like these.
It's easy pitch and catch for those guys. It's not.
I know.
And
so that's why I want to say, because to the fans, that they make it look easy.
Yes.
I'm telling you right now, it is not easy to throw an 18-yard comeback to the field on time and in rhythm while you're getting smoked in the head. So it just speaks to I'm almost saying your point is very good, because it's man, it makes it look easy, but it's not. And that's what's so impressive about the whole thing, especially because the Bills, I don't remember under Leslie Frazier, the Bills defense doing so much pre-snap. They're bringing two to a side, all this stuff. And so Sean McDermott, comes in as obviously running the defense. And it's one of those things where, hey, they had their hands full up front with protections, and he's getting I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence. He's getting protections fixed. He's doing all this stuff pre-snap. You can just tell he has a really, really good command of the huddle and of the offense.
The fumbles. Okay. This is my concern with him, because this is a continuing problem. It's what happened last year. They were really efficient down to down, but it was more in the first half of the season. It slowed down in the second half of the season, but they had trouble turning the ball over, and it was one of their biggest issues. And he tends to put the ball on the ground more than you would want. How does that get addressed within a building? Is that just a quarterback coach being like, listen, you don't have to stop doing too much. Just take it easy, take a breath. What is that conversation like when you have a quarterback that's playing really well outside of a couple ball security issues here and there?
Yeah, and he's still getting used to, even though he's going in, he's still getting used to the pocket in the National Football League. It takes a long time. These guys are coming after the ball every single snap. And I think every time that we've had sort of maybe an issue or it's just hey, just ball security. I'm not going to overcoach you, just ball security. But it seems to show up in the most unopportune times for Trevor Lawrence in that game, because they had 6 points wiped away from turnovers. Now, and then the first one, I'm okay, he got swiped. I get it. He's trying to make a throw, just the left tackle loss on that one. The second one is what was concerning to me, because it was a bad snap and he tried to pick it up. It's just don't make a bad play worse. That's the biggest thing. It might be a horrible play and it might be a horrible snap and we're going to lose 20 yards. Just fall on the ball. Just get the ball. And it's if you can make, we rate plays in the quarterback room on minus, zeros, or plus plays. Okay. Minus plays are bad plays, an interception, fumble, turnover, whatever. Zero plays are hey, you didn't do anything bad. You didn't do anything great. That's okay. You're going to have a lot of zero plays, but that's fine. That's good. Even some completions, it's fine. And plus plays are these big chunk plays, big third down conversions, whatever. He's got more of these minus plays than he does. You want to have no minus plays, and it's going to happen. But just live in the zero world and try to make some, because he did make some hero throws, like you said. But just know when the journey's over. Like, that's what I've always been told. It's like, as a quarterback, it seems so easy. Just know, like, hey, there's a difference between getting another yard, which you don't need, and getting your head knocked off. Yeah. Like, just know when the journey's over, get down, hold on to the ball. And I guarantee you that's the thing. Like, this could have been a little bit more uglier than it really seemed, because they had 2 red zone turnovers. I mean, it's just part of the process, but it is something that continues to rear its ugly head with Trevor Lawrence.
One question that I have about the pure progression stuff compared to kind of cutting the field in half, it puts more on the quarterback, I would assume, where you're asking more of him in those moments. Are there benefits to it that are worth putting more on the quarterback's plate? Like, what is the upside of playing that way if it's going to make the game a little bit more difficult on the quarterback down to down?
I would disagree. I would disagree in a way, and I'll explain, because at least playing quarterback, I would think, or I know at least what I feel, I love pure progression. Okay, let's go to pre-snap read. Nowadays, defenses are like, hey, you got a cover 2 beater here, you got a cover 3 beater here, and your man beater, you need to alert to it. Okay, so there's a lot going on.
You can't pick that out before the snap anymore.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going there, and I've seen literally every possible defense you could possibly imagine in 14 years. And I'm going through in some of the Buffalo stuff, and they have trips to the right, and they have Jordan Poyer and the linebacker to the left, like free safety will linebacker. And I'm like, I got to make my mic protection to the will, so my back comes and scans across for the free safety. And I'm like, okay, it's either pressure or cover like 3 weak, which is like rotation down weak. And all of a sudden, they're running back to the middle of the field, and then they're bringing nickel and Mike. And I'm like, if you're a quarter, like, how do you – it's just so much of a game. And so I always enjoyed pure progression plays, because obviously, like, pressure nixes it. You have to find your pressure answer, and so be it. But so many people move on the snap nowadays and are so good at disguising. I saw multiple times in games this week, there's a free safety on the ball on the weak side of a trips formation. He runs back to single high safety. I'm like, Coach, what, like, dude, and he's going up and he's defending high posts because he's getting there. They're just crazy speed. So for
the Jags
me,
tried to do that against the Texans. That was
yes.
the play where they tried to do it against the Texans, and the Texans hit that big play on them.
And Texas hit the big play. Yeah. Exactly what I'm saying. So defenses have gotten so complex in their pre-snap shifts and motions and what they try to see. The whole thing, like Brandon Staley was always good at, like, I always want to show you something different than what you are pre-snap, like in post-snap. And that's how it always is. So as a quarterback, I was like pure progression plays. Just sweep the board plays. Hey, it doesn't really matter what the coverage is. Look at 1, is he open, throw it. If not, 2, throw it. It sounds so easy. It's not. You have to understand coverage structure with the post-snap rotation of safeties, but it also just gives you a way to be like, all right, man, like, I really don't care what you're playing in the back end. I'm just going to run my offense, and I'm just going to go, is 1 open? No. Is 2 open? No. Is 3 open? Yes. Okay, go. All right, and know where my problems are on each play. So I am of the family, like, I enjoy the pure progression plays. You can't have pure progression plays every single play, right? There's 2 or 3 different types of like progressions for quarterbacks, but those to me personally are my favorite.